as a kid, and I had cousins and uncles that played. And then when I moved to Ontario, uh, my hockey career was over. All the kids that I hung out with, my parents really didn't have a clue. So the kids I hung out with, I asked them, you know, if I could play hockey. And they were told by their parents to tell me that you black guys can't skate because you have weak ankles. And that was the end of my hockey career because as a 10-year-old, I
Yeah.
thought that was it. And so I
Yeah.
stopped playing. Right. And then as I got older and realized that that was not true, and I started playing again because I was able to buy my own gear. I was 20 years old then, and I started playing, and I realized that I missed the boat on a hockey career.
Yeah.
And then I decided to transform that into coaching. So I got my first coaching job in 1996 at the University of Windsor, coaching goalies. I still had that burning desire and passion for goaltending. I was playing, but at 20 years old, there's nowhere to play. So you just go play beer league or whatever that is,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, you win a couple beer league championships and realized you had some talent and just didn't have the opportunity. And that's fine. So I turned that opportunity into a passion of coaching. And I made that my mission to get to the highest level of coaching as possible. And I've done that. Like I coached, as you know, with the national team since 2009. And even my last summer, I did an event with the women's team. I coached the under 22s, and it was a great time, great camp. Every event I've done with Team Canada has been outstanding.
What, when you work with the national teams, what were some of the most positive experiences working with the national teams?
Well, I have to say, Wally, the most, uh, the best way to answer that question is with the women's program, the attention to detail from all levels of from management down to the players, the attention to detail was second to none. I had an unbelievable experience and felt inclusion. I felt that what I thought mattered. I thought what I did mattered through every event on the women's side. I did one on the men's side, and the experience was not the same. That's all
Yeah.
I'll say about that.
Yeah. Now, your role with goalies, and were you involved like in this final selection process?
No, the goalies were chosen by scouts and the management team. We did have, you know, once the team was picked, we had a lot more say. But because they didn't want to, I believe they didn't want any favoritism to be with the coaches as far as the goalies go. Because you know, if it's a goalie I picked or if it's a goalie I work with, you know, that adds to the. I think it adds a lot to the propensity of you
Yeah.
know just leaning one way or another, and I never want that, especially at that level. You know, you want to go by what you see, not what you who you work with, kind of thing.
Yeah. You know, in all my years, goalie coaches, they didn't exist when I was playing.
Right.
And they were treated like targets, and they still are to a degree. Coaches don't pay attention to the drill and its impact on a goalie, good or bad. And I'm guessing that you have a concern with that when you work with goalie coaches and you might watch practices or go out. And are you able to interact with them at all and make changes, and that they will make changes and adaptations to suit the goalie better?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wally. How I'll answer that is it all depends on the the openness of the goal of the coaches. Good morning, Tim. It depends on the openness of the coaching staff that you're working with. I find some of the older staff members, like if you have coaches that have been around a while, they're a little more open to change.
Yeah.
where the younger coaches who are always trying to find their way and make their mark on the game are not as easily swayed into adjusting the practice with a goalie coach there. I'm currently working with a team, Bell Tire, with two young coaches, and I'll call them beforehand and say, I'm coming. Can we adjust practice a little bit? Yeah, yeah, we'll take care of you when I get there. What happens is I end up, jumping in when the drill is between drills. I'll have a quick conversation with the goalie, and basically I move pucks. So I'm trying to get them to understand to integrate the goalie into practice more. But I find the young coaches, it's a tough road to hoe.
Was this the case with national teams?
No, not at all. And again, I'll say on the women's side, not at all. On the men's side, there was a little bit of pushback as far as know your role, kind of do your thing. Uh, we even had one practice that our bus was late getting to practice. So the first thing they dropped was me preparing the goalies for practice, which I thought was unfortunate. And then I got yelled at because the goalies weren't ready. It's like, what did you want me to do? You told me I wouldn't have any time with the goaltenders. So I really, you can't be mad at me for what you get because I told you the goalies, they need that. They need to get ready in a certain way. They need to be prepared for practice. And that's my job. And if I'm not allowed to do that job, then you're not really going to have a very good day.
Well, Perry, goalies aren't important. They're only the most important. They're the only most important. So of course they would drop the goalies warm up.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Yeah.
like easy.
And it cost us because we had a very strong team at the under 17s in 2017. And like we had the likes of Quentin Byfield, Jamie Drysdale, John Luke Foodie, um, Will Cooley, a couple other guys from the West that were just phenomenal hockey players. But our goaltenders I had one from the West and one from the East, and they were great. But I just didn't feel that we had enough time to really prepare them for this level of compete. And it was unfortunate because we had a team that should have won it all.
Well, before I get Michael to introduce himself, I just want to get Perry told me an interesting story about his start and getting into goaltending, and I just found we've done some talk here on inclusiveness, but this is worth hearing for our audience for sure. So, Perry, you grew up in Nova Scotia, and go ahead and just tell it again.
Absolutely. Well, it's a story that, when people watch me on ice, it kind of tells the story a little bit because Tim knows I'm not a great skater. I'm not a great shooter. I'm none of those things. But in Nova Scotia, hockey was very big. I had my mom's cousin was the second black pro hockey player. And he had two twin brothers that were better than him, but they didn't want to play at that level. So when I moved to Ontario at 10 years old, my parents didn't have a clue how to get me into hockey. And I only asked my friends that I did a lot of other things with because they played hockey. And I said, I want to play. And they were told by their parents that you black guys can't skate because you have weak ankles. And then I was told that story as a 10-year-old. And unfortunately, it stuck. And that was the end of my hockey career until I was in my 20s. And I was able to buy my own gear. But then it's too late to play anywhere. Right. So I just played beer league. And then I had this complete burning desire that just would not go away. And I decided to get into coaching.
Okay, Michael, welcome. Good to see your face. Looks like you got your hair trimmed a little bit. It looks pretty good. Mike, could you introduce yourself? Perry knows me, myself, and him through national programs. And if he just found out a little, got a little bit of your background, he would be able to tweak his responses and answer any questions more appropriately.
Yeah, no, Perry, thanks for being on. So I actually joined these guys, maybe a year ago now, but I'm in here. I'm in New York, a little bit about an hour outside the city. I work a lot with USA Hockey, coaching education program, player development program, and a lot of stuff around the U.S. But the last 6 or 7 years, I branched out and I run my own hockey consulting company for youth hockey programs specifically. So, how to do tryouts, how to hire coaches, how to keep coaches, communicating with parents. And then I do a lot of my company, Mike Benelli Hockey Solutions, partners up with youth hockey organizations right now around the world. I do some work with groups in Finland and Norway, and obviously in Canada and the U.S. mostly, in just building and associating themselves with the best hockey providers out there. I work actually, the way I was introduced to Wally and the group is through these guys that own a company called The Power Player, which does like a parent player feedback system. And I work with Gel Sticks and companies like Helios and ProSharp and True Hockey, things like that. So I try to bring all those different pieces of my past hockey life. Don't have to cut anybody right now. Don't have to worry about getting fired. Don't have to worry about trying to get hired. So it's been a little easier the last couple of years on my family for sure. I did coach college hockey for a couple of years. I've coached high school and prep school hockey for over 35 years, and I think I've opened up seven different facilities as a program director and an architect. So I've been running around quite a bit. And I'd love to hear more of your story, only because it's funny. I do this Directors Club show for the coaches site, and the next week we're doing one on February 1st. We're actually I'm looking for guests. Currently, I'm working with John Sandful. I don't know if you know him from the NHL, but he used to work with ice hockey in Harlem. And we're doing our Directors Club is going to be talking about building diversity and inclusion into your youth hockey programs. For Black History Month. Black History Month here in the U.S. is the month of February.
Yes, same here.
And yeah, so we're gonna try to kind of center that episode on inclusion, diversity. I've done a lot of interviews with like the Snyder Foundation folks down in Philadelphia. I work actually. I just set up a program with ice hockey in Harlem. We have a rink in the NHL has a really cool rink in. On Manhattan West, it's called. It's 33rd and 9th, which is right outside the NHL studio, or right outside the NHL new offices. So we do like an event where we bring the ice hockey and Harlem kids in. We do an hour clinic, and then they go over before the NHL shop officially opens. They get to go in and see the NHL store by themselves in the morning. So we're planning on some stuff in February to do, some Black History Month celebrations with them as well. So. It's been
awesome.
It's been an interesting journey for sure.
Yeah, I bet. It's interesting, Mike. I feel like I've seen you before somewhere, so it could have been on the coaches site because I'm on there quite often. So I
Good.
love the work that you do. Just spreading hockey all over the world. That's just a great thing, and I am so impressed with the steps that USA Hockey has made. I've been a big fan of watching their growth for the last 15 years or so, and it's guys like you that are making it go so fast. So congratulations to you on that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't do too much with USA Hockey as much as I was doing the coaching education program when it was live, and we haven't had a live session in over 2 years now and everything. And I think they found the formula of, we like the free programming better than paying all that money to get staff in and do the I'm a big live guy. But guys, I just got to take this call, but I'll be back on. Thanks, Wally.
Right.
Okay.
Right on.
Perry, do you know Tom Malloy?
I'm not sure, Wally. I the name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
Okay, well, Tom's a Canadian with lots of hockey experience, and Tim Taylor is from down south. And Tim, I really like the drill you sent this morning. And just going to get Tom a little introduction, please, for our friend Perry.
Hi, Perry. Yeah.
Hi, how are you, Tom?
I'm pretty good. Well, right now I'm coaching U13 girls. The last 4 years I was coaching college women. Before that I was coaching college men, and I've been in Salzburg, Austria.
Is that with the OHA in Salzburg?
I couldn't hear you there. Sorry, I gotta turn up my phone.
Yeah, no worries. Was that with the program in Salzburg?
Yeah.
The school there?
Yeah, they hadn't built that new one yet. It was 208,
Okay.
209. So Pierre Paget was the head coach, and Rayo Rutsalainen and Vladimir Yursinov and a bunch of other coaches were there. So I was there, and I don't know, I've just done a lot of hockey stuff. Looking forward to hearing what you got to say.
Awesome. I'm excited about it. I'm really eager to, just share ideas and thoughts with you guys. I'd like to hear your opinion as well on, the state of where hockey is today when it relates to goaltending and their role and their importance and, practice planning. And then when you get to the playoffs, what is their role as far as helping the team organize the penalty kill a little bit better? Because as you know, when you get in the playoffs, things have to be just better. And now we're trying to. Well, I was trying to with my last team to get them to understand the value of the pre-scout when it comes to playoffs when it's a 7-game series. So things like that, I think having the experts in the room here give me some feedback. I think it can give my next team even better progress as far as getting through to the next rounds and further into the playoffs.
Well, Perry, we're getting our guests on gradually, so when they have a question, and I may say, "Hell, you got a question?" and I'll get them to introduce themselves quickly. And everybody here has a vast background. You can see by the our hair color, most of us are a little on the elderly side, which is a more experienced side. And like you said, the young coaches you've worked with in national team programs were less receptive to information than the older ones. And I think all of us here realize that the older you get, the more you realize you have to learn. And that's the nature of this group, is a lifelong learning group. So, Tim, you prepared a number of questions, and I think it's a good place to start if you could ask the lead question, and then if anybody else has any. I've got a number in the back of my mind, but Tim, you did a great job with that email, and I wonder if you could just kick off a question, and we could all, Perry could respond, and so could the group. Go ahead.
Thanks, Wally. Hopefully Sammy can jump on here later so we can get some real goalie perspective. I've worked with Perry a number of times. Terrific guy, and
Absolutely.
really does a good job. I guess maybe the place to start is the question that popped right into my head when we wandered onto the subject last week. Because I just finished watching the women's U18 championship, and witnessed, after a spectacular tournament, witnessed the Swedish goalie pulling herself in the championship game. And it occurred to me right away. I said, geez, I think I've only seen that one other time in my long career at elite hockey levels, really going back to, if you count going back to midget AAA when I was playing, that's 50 years of elite hockey, really. And I've really only seen it twice, maybe one other time. I guess if we include the infamous Patrick Waugh story, that would be the lead case. But I wondered, Perry, your experience with that. How much have you seen it? And really, the key question for a lot of young coaches, especially out there, is how do you best deal with it, like as a goalie coach in particular?
Yeah, I've never seen that before. It was a big shock to me. It says a lot about the difference in, you know, the way kids perceive sport. Um, you know, as a goalie and a coach, to ever think about quitting on your team, because it's basically what that is. That's just a no-no. It doesn't matter, you know, not every game's going to go your way, but at the same time, you don't stop fighting for your team no matter what, right? It's up to the coaches to say, today's not your day, and then they reset with another goaltender. But to pull yourself, it I just don't understand it. I've been trying to wrap my head around that, and even when I played, what little I played, there was no way I would ever quit in the middle of a game, and especially when you're playing for your country. I don't understand that. So it's something that I never seen, and I really wouldn't know how to deal with that as a coach or as a player.
Your Mike, Wally. I just got to take your call.
Perry, I encountered this at an Alberta zone camp. 8 teams, same age, boys hockey. I think it was U18, and I'm mentoring a team whose goalie was struggling, and he struggled to the point where he was crying in the net, literally.
Mm.
And I told them to call a timeout, give him a break, and I got the head coach to talk to him just to see if he could get him refocused. And it just happened to be that he was the weaker of the two goalies, and the powers to be came down at the end of the period criticizing us for doing that. And I just mentioned that as a mentor, I wanted to give the kid a timeout and a chance to reload, kind of thing, to get back in. So we put him back in for the next period. But that was a situation where I don't know if these discussions go on, but in sports psych, they always tell you to be prepared for any scenario and possibly have those conversations with goalies, imagining every possible situation. But the head coach needs a plan, and the goalies have to understand it, appreciate it, respect it. So, Hal, go ahead, Hal.
Hi, good morning, gang. Hi, Perry. I'm Hal Turris. I'm in Minnesota. And like Tom, I've coached for 5 decades, every level from college all the way down to squirts. A lot of high school, a lot of junior hockey. It's interesting that this scenario, I wasn't aware of the one that you guys were talking about, but I think the Wild's goalie took himself out of the game about 2 weeks ago, Patrick Fleury. He was so upset. I don't know what, I don't watch them very much, but it's on the news, on the sports news a lot. And I think about that position. That's I've never played it, and I don't know if anybody else in the room has here, except maybe you did, Barry. But if you're not seeing the puck well, and I had a goalie in high school that let the first 3 shots of the game go right by him. He never moved in a playoff game. He never, and they were easy. I mean, he went over his glove, over his blocker, right by his feet. And I did take him out. That was my call. And he thanked me afterwards. So he just couldn't, he wasn't focused. He was too nervous. He couldn't focus. At the higher levels, that probably shouldn't be the case. But, you know what? They're human just like the rest of us. And if they're having a bad day, I would never criticize one of my goalies saying, Coach, I just don't have it today. So I just toss that out as a counterpoint to, never pulling yourself off the ice. But in pro hockey, there's too much money, there's too much ego at stake. And I certainly at an international team level, I assume the same. But yeah, I wish we had her on to talk about her experiences, Sammy Joe. Anyways, that's all. Thank you.
Tim Bothwell.
Yeah, thanks. And I certainly can appreciate those thoughts, Hal. Yeah, as weird as they are at times, goalies are human. Yeah, it's hard to remember that sometimes, but yeah, of course they are, and it's the uniqueness of the position that makes it extra challenging. All of us who have played as skaters know there are days when we don't have it, but we're really not allowed to quit. And it does happen, same as with the goalies, that the coach makes that decision sometimes to sit you down for a period or bench you for the rest of the game. And I remember one of my games in pretty vividly in Buffalo. I was playing with Guy Lapointe in St. Louis, and it was not our night. We were like -4 after like 12 minutes in the game, and it was definitely one of those games like, let me crawl under a rock somewhere. But it's of course, with the goalies, it's different because their mistakes are writ large on the scoreboard and open for all to see. Lots of times, like in my -4, a lot of people wouldn't even notice I'm -4. I did. But so it's quite different. And yeah, you bring up Fleury. I do recall that last month sometime, and he left the team after that for some sort of personal reasons, I believe. But whatever the case, there was an extra factor there, but still the same. And I guess I'd interject, like Perry, Charlene Labonte, and you might be surprised to hear that she was the other example that maybe the first example I ever saw. And I will say again, as I did last week, I love Charlene. She's a tremendous competitor and a wonderful person, and she was a great goalie. But I did see her pull herself at the SR Championships one year. Occasionally there can be an injury situation, as we need to keep in mind as well, that the goalie is aware of an injury that might not get related in the immediate moment. But it's kind of a difficult situation. And yeah, like it's tough to see someone like not just quit on their team, but quit on themselves, which is equally important. And interesting, I guess, Perry, that you haven't had that experience to see somebody do it with one of your teams. You must be a good coach, I guess. So, anyway, just some thoughts there. Not really a question.
If I could, I'd like to talk about this because I think it's really important that we understand a couple of things that I think have bolstered how a goalie could even think about pulling themselves outside of an injury, because those I've seen a lot. If a goalie gets injured, you don't really see it because you can't see their facial expression. And then, they'll go down and then, the trainer will come out and the next thing the goalie's off and they're done for the game, where a lot of times that's just an injury. But here's where I think we can actually get some traction. I'd love the opinion of the group here on with minor hockey, and I've seen so much of it. There's always a real 1A goalie, then a one, not even a one. I'm going to say a 2 to a 3. So the goalies are very different in their style and their abilities, but the goalie that has all the training and all the better technique and all those things, they get the bigger games. And the goalies that are, that 3 and really not at the same level as the other goalie, they get very little difficult games and they never really get a chance to grow their game because, it's in minor hockey. I think the emphasis is too much on winning. rather than development. And it's the one thing that I think uh, should change in minor hockey, because to a lot of these teams, especially, I understand AAA, the kids are spending a lot of money, but at the same time, there's for me and goalies, there's no development because you don't get to try those things and playing those meaningful games where you have to be on top of your game no matter what. But at the same time, the emphasis is so much on winning that you get a couple goals in and you're out, and you never get to build that confidence and that drive to want to be better in the moment. So these are the things I'd like to hear your opinion on as far as minor hockey at the AAA level. That winning is everything.
I guess part of the discussion too can be, and not, sorry, Hal, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would agree with Perry a lot on this. And in our own team, I've got a male goalie who's a second-year kid. This is Bantams. And he played a hell of a game last night. He played the best game of the year. And our other goalie is a female first year. But I just rotate them. And, this kid last night drew the best team in the league, who beat us 8-0 8 weeks ago. And it was a 3-0 game, open net last night. And even the other coach came over and congratulated him. But I also noticed with the female goalie, who's not quite as good, she really rises to the challenge against good competition. She's a competitor at heart. She's not quite as big and she's not quite as agile, but I agree with you. I do this for the rest of the kids too. We don't really run a power play. We just play hockey, and because all kids need to be in all these situations. Many, many years ago in a community called Edina, Minnesota, which has produced a couple hundred Division I hockey players. I had two goalies on the Bantam team, and one was better than the other. But when it shook out 2 years later, the one that wasn't as good ended up the starting goalie on the varsity, and the other kid relegated JV and quit playing hockey because he never got any better. And so anyways, that's the Minnesota take on this. So good questions, good ideas, you guys.
I just had, there's 3 or 4 things we could go in different directions, but sort of on that note, same note, Hal and Perry, you mentioned it, because really, like, the flip side of this is, as Perry mentioned, you pull a goalie too early, too consistently, and don't allow them to develop the the mental strength to battle through bad situations. Obviously, it sometimes gets to be a delicate balance. Like, do you leave him in or do you leave her in or not? But that quality of being able to, be victimized by a bad bounce or a bad break or just a bad goal, but then bounce back from it and be able to shut the door. I've seen a number of goalies in my time that I had complete confidence in. If they gave up a bad one, they were going to be able to shut the door and give the team a chance if you gave them that opportunity. So it's really important to try to develop that, obviously, especially with young goalies, like work with them actively. Maybe you have to pull them one time. You have the conversation about, I would love to have left you in, and maybe next time I will. I want, it's a really important, maybe, Perry, maybe a critical skill for a goalie to develop that mental strength. And, you go back to the Mike Keenan days where it was, oh, you're out after one, you're back in, you're out after another one, you're back in, where it's just a complete game really with the goalies. But that's the flip side of this. And it's just an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I really think, one of the things that happen with these goalies, a lot of them, they just develop and mature at different levels and different timelines in their own lives. And some kids need to be put in the fire just once and then they get it. where other kids, you can put them in the fire 3 or 4 times, and it's just the maturity is just not there yet. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you just pull them and you leave them. And the one thing I always look at when a goalie gets pulled is how long does it take for not even the head coach, an assistant coach is fine, someone to go down and talk to that goalie and let them know what's going on. Because a lot of times I see the pull and you see the goalie comes off and they're frustrated and they don't even understand why they were pulled yet. And then nobody talks to them. So they just, you know, go down the rabbit hole of everything they've done wrong in their whole career. And they never really get out of that because every time they get scored on, their first response is to look at the bench to see if they're still in. And that's no way to play to me.
Rick Puttock, I was thinking of you. I'm going to ask you. Go ahead, Rick, with yours.
I wasn't sure you'd ask Wally, so I thought I'd volunteer it.
All right.
But yeah, at the risk of repeating myself from last week, but some of the fellows weren't on. But I've been known to take a goalie out and let the guy going in know that he's only going in temporarily. We settle the goaltender down on the bench and have a chat with him and or her, and send them back into the action again. And in one season, the AA midget season, we had a team we were scrambling to put together into a new program. Neither goaltender was what we'd consider a one. Both struggled, so we adopted a process of 5-minute shifts within the game later in the season, and we finished the season that way, where they just changed every 5 minutes based on whistles. Give them a chance for our goaltender fella to have a chat with him, just settle down, regroup, go back in. They got into that rhythm, and the team finished very strongly with that in process. So it obviously didn't disrupt what they were doing. And in my opinion, it strengthened their experience and strengthened their development.
Be great if you had a lefty and a righty in that situation, Rick.
That would really confuse them, Tim.
Al Pearce mentioned change on the fly.
I know.
I really think that's a great idea.
Did that all year long, and the goalies every 4 or 5 minutes, like you're saying, Rick. You know, the team went up the other end, and here comes the goalie, and there goes the next one out on the ice. They played a whole season that way, and they were pretty, mediocre team, but they certainly had a memorable season and had a lot of fun doing it. So just something novel, something new.
Anybody on
The
board?
one thing, if I may,
Go ahead, Barry.
yeah, the one thing, if I may, like with this group, you guys are so in tune to what the game is asking and what the game can give back. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys are so in touch with everything that goes on in this great game that you're not afraid to try these things. And I think they're amazing. And especially the best part that I've heard so far, there was always communication on what was going on. And if younger coaches understood that the communication would help so much, this game would be so much better. None of you sound like dictators at all about this is one way we're doing it and that's it. You all seem to be so highly educated in this game that it's just fun to listen to. So I appreciate this call so much.
Kim, I wonder if we can get Kim to introduce herself and chime in again.
Sure. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi, Perry. How are you?
Hi, Kim. How are you?
We haven't seen each other in a couple of years.
It's been a couple of years. It's great to see you.
Yeah. Too bad you're still stuck in goalie world, but someone has to do it.
I don't have the skill to do anything else, unfortunately.
Fair enough. I can't do it. I just tell them to stop the little black thing. Question for you. I'm coaching U9 now, Perry. I've really upped the ante here. It's actually way harder than coaching junior.
Oh, yeah.
But, it's interesting to see in the female side how many teams have a dedicated goalie already at U9. And I'm curious your thoughts on that. And perhaps it's different between the boys and the girls. We don't have a dedicated goalie. We haven't all season. And what we've gone to now that we're full ice, is we sort of have 4 kids who want to do it a little bit more, but we're not letting them do it every game. And they only practice it, the practice right before we have a game. So they skate out most of the time. But I'm curious your thoughts because, we've lost all our games so far, full ice, and we've outshot every team 2-1. And every other team has a dedicated goalie. So, that seems to be the formula for winning. Not that I care about winning at this level, but it's certainly, we have kids who can barely stand up who want to do it. And we have extra goalie sessions that support them, but we're not willing to make them dedicated. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that. Maybe it's different between the boys and the girls about when that button needs to be pushed.
Yeah, I don't think it's different between boys and girls. I think it's all about, what the team's focus is. And to me, as a kid, I never ever wanted to play out once I played net once. I had no interest in playing out again. And, you know, I don't know if that was just me, but I've also seen it in many young goalies. Uh, when they get that little bug to be a goalie, it's like you can't turn it off. So again, I'm not sure what your kids are all about, but and these are boys, girls, doesn't matter. When that light goes on, when they want to be a goalie, it's all they can talk about. It's all they think about, and it's all they want to do. So, I don't know if you quell that fire a little bit by just not allowing them to play, or kind of give into it and let them run and see where it goes. Because some kids, as everyone knows, their whole focus is scoring goals. But you do want to see them learn the defensive side of the game. So it's it's one of those things where exposing them to it is great, but at the same time, when they really know what they want, maybe it's time. I'm not sure, but in my experience, what I've seen is those kids that want to be goalies, that's all they want. Bit of
Yeah.
a long-winded answer, but
Yeah, no,
that's what
that
I've
just to
seen.
follow up, I mean, we gave everyone the chance because when we were playing half ice, of course, you
Mhm.
need to anyways. So everyone got their call. Thankfully, my daughter hated it. No offense. But I don't know how to help her. Maybe it'd be better if she was a goalie, then she wouldn't have to listen to me. But we don't have that kid, and I agree with you. If they have that fire who's like, this is like, that's all I want to do. And I've seen that with U9 girls in the past. We definitely don't have that kid who is like, this is
Yeah.
all I want to be focused on. So I don't know. I look at it as a luxury. It means everyone gets to get a little bit more skill time and a little bit more skating out. And because we do have additional goalie training they can go to once a week, that's built into their fee package. I mean, 8 of our kids could go to goalie training every week. It doesn't matter to us as long as they have the
Wow.
gear.
Yeah.
And so, I look at it best of both worlds. They can do both. And if one of them catches the bug, great. But certainly seems to be a difference maker. For, the parents, of course, are now starting to talk about it. Is my daughter listening to me now, Tim? No, but we had a major breakthrough. And she told me on Sunday if she had hockey every day, she'd be happy.
Perfect.
2 months ago, I didn't even know she wanted to play anymore. So we're going to ride that train as long as we can.
Mm,
But I'm not letting her play hockey every day, mind you. But just so you know.
that's a good train. Go ahead, Rick. Your mic's off.
Yeah, I'm the guy that's in favor of not locking a 9, 10, 11-year-old guy or girl into a position that they're not going to be easily changeable as they progress. In my experience, I like to see everybody that wants to try the position. 1 or 2 instances is usually enough to cure most of them. Either it's, in my experience, it's too dull, there's not enough action, or it's pretty humiliating when they just keep turning the light on behind them. So, in my own instance, I had 2 boys that played. One is a goalie. He was not a full-time goalie until his bantam years. He played every position on the ice, and to this day, he still plays. He plays goal, but he still gives it up every once in a while for somebody in his beer league team that wants to have a go at it. And he's still fully capable of participating in the game at whatever position, whatever spots are open on the ice. So, you know, just from an overview, I would like not to see the kids being locked into a position at that young age.
I've got a question related to starting goalies and overplaying goalies for the sake of winning. That I don't know that that's a problem anywhere else. Have any of you experienced that with teams in your associations, organizations, communities, areas where one goalie is getting overplayed at the expense of the other? And it's similar to some players, the more talented ones at 11 or 12, getting double shifted. What's your experiences at that? Hell?
You're right on, Wally, and it's right in our program. At the high school level, they've got 3 goalies. The best goalie was hurt for the first 7 or 8 games. And when he came back, the other goalies haven't seen 1 minute of ice time. Even though they're statistically equal so far, the second goalie hasn't played again, and the coach is a win at all costs. And he's going to ride this other kid for the rest of the season. And the second kid, I'm sure, is going to sit on the bench for the rest of the season. And I think he's also a senior. But this is really common here. You ride your best goalie because winning's the only thing that matters in high school hockey in Minnesota.
Perry.
Yeah, you know, I keep hearing about, you know, winning is everything. And then, like I said before, development happens at different stages. Like when you watch an NHL goalie, they don't hit their peak until they're 28 years old because it's such a specialized position and the game has become so fast that, you know, there's just so much to learn as far as hockey IQ, and the mistakes they make can be so minimal. And, you know, a kid has 1 or 2 bad games and they never see the ice again. And it's really unfortunate because at the end of the day, the mental side of goaltending is so hard to really grasp. Where if you get pulled over and over again, how are you supposed to develop that thicker skin to be able to play those harder games? And I think those opportunities are definitely there for those kids to be better, and it's just not happening. And it, you know, I hear stories like that all over the place. I go and watch minor hockey games, and it's the same goalies playing all the big games, and the other goalies play the games where they know they don't have a chance to lose. So it's really unfortunate to me.
Tim.
Thanks for that, Barry. Like, so we sort of migrate back to how do you handle that, those rare situations where a goalie might pull themselves. And, you know, really, you know, I like, in a lot of ways, I really like Rick's idea, and done it once or twice in the past myself, like when Keenan was in the middle of his whack-a-mole goalie mode in the 80s, where he would routinely change him 2 or 3 times a game at different points. It did occur to me that Rick's plan is a pretty good one, I think, in terms of if you ever meet that situation where the goalie's either really struggling or they do pull themselves. If they're really struggling, tell the other goalie, hey, you're going in for 2 shifts or 3 shifts. I need to talk to the other guy. That's a really good teachable moment. We say, hey, you can express your belief in the goalie and say, we need you back in there. Your team needs you to keep scrapping. It's a really important skill for you to develop. You're going back in. So I really like that idea, especially at developmental phases. As Perry mentioned, and we know it's a really important skill for a goalie to develop that thick skin. And I thought even the idea, like when a scorer, like at the pro level or high levels, if the scorer is really struggling, the message is usually simplify your game. Focus on getting 2 good shots on the net every period if you can, or if you get 4 good shots every game, then you're going to start scoring, because the good scorers score whatever 12, 14% of the time. But simplify the game, and the same thing with the goalie. Maybe encourage, hey, when you find yourself struggling, focus on, I'm going to stop the next puck. I'm going to stop the next puck, and stay on that. And, we know that 85% of the time, even the worst case scenario, they're going to stop the next puck. So it allows them to develop some success. So I like Rick's idea, and I think it's probably a really, really useful tool for all young coaches, instead of just pulling a goalie, robbing themselves of that opportunity to learn and grow from it, to give them that opportunity. I think it's great.
I wonder if Mike and Tim Taylor have any scenarios that they might have encountered in their hockey experience. Mike, over the years, working with different associations, encountering parents, anything related to goaltending, anything in your areas?
Yeah, I know for me, especially when the kids get a little older, the tendency for parents is to want to find out, how can I get my kid on a team where he gets to play all the time and only. And what I try to advise is, well, we got to find teams that you can play on that there's another goalie as good as you or in a challenging position, because at some point you're going to be challenged. Like at some point you need to learn how to compete with that player every day in practice. And I think a lot of parents look at it as, oh, my kid's the starter, and then the crappy kid is here. And then to everyone's point, all of a sudden that kid that's not that good never plays. He doesn't improve. He doesn't get better. And then your starter gets hurt, and then what are you going to do? Look down the bench, say, okay, now you're my guy. We want you in. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I haven't played at all this year. So I think it's just, I love the fact that, and when I say older, I'm like, even 12U, 12 and older, I just think we should get kids in competitive places, just like we would with our skaters, and find ways to make sure that in practice they have somebody they can look across at and say, wow, that kid's beating me, or I've got to catch up to that kid, or I want to make sure I stop more pucks than that kid. And that's hard for parents to accept. It's hard for a parent to say, well, why is my kid only getting half the time if he's much, much better? And I said, well, because we're trying to help your son or daughter when the time's going to come that they have to compete against somebody else.
Plus, presumably, both parents are paying the same amount of money to play on your team in many cases.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I think that some organizations they'll outright say, well, here, listen, we're not fair. Like, we don't care about being fair. We care about winning. And my point is, well, if you don't do your research as a parent, and if a coach is telling you your kid's my kid, he's the only one, then I'm like, well, I don't know if that's the best situation for you. Maybe it might be for that short little 5 months, but over the course, like when you want to get better, you need to have, steel sharpens steel, right? You need to make sure that you're in a place where the other person is competing against you and you're fighting every day for that opportunity. I personally think that's just the healthiest environment, especially when the kids are at that 14, 15, 16-year-old age group.
Absolutely. And, I think we all know that as we're talking, like the mental part of the game it's important for everybody, but it's critically important for the goalies. And if you're working your son or daughter into a spot where they're never challenged as a goalie and they're always going to play, you're robbing them of an opportunity to grow and learn and deal with adversity. You're cheating your child if you don't make them earn their way. It's just such an important, critical skill. If you really want to develop yourself for the elite level, you're always going to be challenged moving ahead. So I totally agree with you, Mike. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different spin on that. I think you're absolutely right in what you're saying. I have goalies all the way up to pros that, when they want to work, they only want to work by themselves. And I've challenged them all. It's like, if you're only going by what you do and you want to work on your own, you never have to compete. And I said, that's not the world that you play in. I said, when you go to any team from at any level almost, when it's competitive, there's another goalie there. And you can learn things from that goalie that might be a little bit better in some areas than you are, and you can also help them learn. And then, like my best example is watching the two goalies of the Boston Bruins. They are absolutely ultra competitive, both of them, but they are cheering for each other as much as any goalies I've ever seen. They give big hugs after the game, and I don't think it's phony. I think it's real. That's who they are. But when they're on the ice in practice, they both want the net, but they're okay with whichever one gets it because they've formed that competitive edge. And I think every goalie and every player at every level needs to be able to compete against, like Tim said, steel sharpens steel. And it couldn't be any truer for goaltenders.
Your Mike Wally.
I think the NHL is a great example of earning your role and supporting the other goalie as the in terms of the ups and downs of goaltender consistency. There's a real art to that, a psychological game going on at all times. They know it, and I'm sure there's a goalie coach with those teams that knows the goalie and mindset. So I've always had this in the back of my mind. Where does the goalie coach come into that picture at that level, at the competitive levels, in terms of the head coach and the psychology of goaltending related to being pulled, hanging in there, who gets to play? Anybody got feedback on that? Perry, have you?
Yes, well, I most certainly do. Curtis Sanford is a good friend of mine. He's got the Leafs job. And if people watch the Toronto Maple Leafs a lot, and they realize the biggest difference in the goalie uh, in the game from the goalie's perspective. To me, I know the work of Curtis Sanford, and I believe he has absolutely changed the culture of the goalies in Toronto, where you know both goalies are given opportunities to shine, and because I think I've had many discussions with Curtis, and he has the same philosophy I do. I work harder with the goalie that's not in the net than the goalie that's starting. Right? If they're getting that opportunity, I'm pushing the other kid. Listen, this is where you want to be. So let's dig in a little bit deeper here and find out how do you get the net back. And it would go that way the entire season for me. And that's what I think he's doing because they're both being extremely challenged and they're both rising to the occasion because it's an environment where you feel you're part of that conversation as a goalie. And where some goalie coaches, this is the way you're doing it, get over it. There's no discussion. Where with Curtis, there's always a discussion. And I think that's the biggest change in goalie coaching right now.
I wasn't going to go to the NHL direction, but it's a good opening right now because we've got a situation here in Calgary, and I'm going to be really interested. I don't know if they've announced it yet, whether Markstrom is going to start tonight against Chicago, because if I'm correct, Vladar is 8-0-3 in his last 11 starts. Markstrom has been a little inconsistent this year. At what point, or as a policy, the way the NHL teams generally work is, you've got a number one, you've got a number two, you look for your spots to put number two in for a game, or if he plays outstandingly, maybe two, but you always default to going back to number one. But at what point, and the Flames are in a death struggle for a playoff spot right now, what point do you say, hey, number two is freaking playing well, we're going to give him the extra start now, we're going to ride him until he falters. And, you know, if you've got a good working relationship, if you've got goalies that are healthy mentally, and I really believe that Markstrom would be one of those goalies that would react well to it. If they just rode Vladar for, you know, 5 or 6 or 7, you know, all goalies are going to struggle at some point. And then you put Markstrom back in, dollars to donuts, he's going to respond to that in a very positive way. But it doesn't seem to be the way. And I really question it, especially in this specific example here where, you know, it's so, you know, and Markstrom hasn't been really bad lately. I don't want to mischaracterize that, but he's been inconsistent this year, and his stats are way off where they need to be a number one goalie. So there's lots there, but it's just an interesting situation.
Harry?
Oh, Wally, I'd like to hear what you have to say before I go.
Well, it's more specific to Vladar and Markstrom. He had 2 in a row. And the second one, he wasn't good. They won, but he wasn't good. Now, I don't really believe it's, you know, to earn that opportunity, they had to win and he had to have a good game. And that's the head coach's call. So that's my opinion. And it's a fine line because Markstrom's getting the big dollars. He's the guy they've committed to. They brought in the organization. And the psyche, they don't want to destroy a psyche. And I agree with Tim. He may be a great goalie teammate like Vladar has been. It may be the right time to go with him. I'm just not sure that it's the right time yet. That's just my opinion anyway.
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that, Perry, really quick. You know, I don't disagree with you, Wally. Like the third goal, I think it was the third goal the other night, was a stoppable puck, and you know, you could say he didn't play well, but really the other 2 goals were not really his doing. And if he was the number one goalie, people would look past that one goal and just routinely start him in the next game. And that's part of my point is the number 2 doesn't get that opportunity too often because he was good, but then he let in a questionable one. And that's really what Markstrom's been doing all year. And it's his history. So it's an interesting debate. I'm not going to be surprised at all if they go back to Markstrom tonight. But at some point, they have to get off that gravy train because really, how many times have we as coaches said, well, you found a way to win the game, you get to start again if you're in that mode as a coach. Like, it's making the stop at the right time. And anyway, it's just an interesting discussion. Go ahead, Perry. Sorry for.
No, I love that. I love that, you know, the back and forth on this. And what I find really interesting with Markstrom this year, because I've always been a big Markstrom fan, and I'm at the point now where he has to question what is really going on in his game because I'm not sure he knows. And as a goalie coach, I see things that he does where, you know, I've heard some of you guys even say it today. He's just not seeing the puck well. And that to me is have a seat, you know, let's work on your game outside of practice. Let's find out what's really going on, why you're thinking the way you're thinking, and why you're reacting the way you're acting. Why aren't you seeing the puck? Because you are paid a gazillion dollars to stop the puck, and you're very inconsistent. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. He's very inconsistent this year, and Vladar can give them enough goaltending that they can be in the game. And it's not replacing him, but he needs to have a seat. I think, uh, and I'm kind of learning more about how the Calgary Flames are coached, and it is, you know, when you're on top of your game, you're going to get rewarded, but when you're not, you're not. That's just the way he coaches. So I really agree that, you know, with Markstrom, he needs to figure his game out again. I think he's overthinking everything. And that to me is a goalie coach's job.
And that's an interesting point, Perry, that yeah, that really is the Daryl way. And Daryl's a terrific coach and a wonderful person. Is you got to earn your keep. And if you're not on your game, you know, you're maybe going to drop down a bit. I mean, people, you know, there's some give and take there, but generally speaking, that's his approach. And it's interesting that it doesn't seem to be the approach with the goalies. And that could lead into, okay, is the head coach the main goalie coach, or is the goalie coach the main goalie coach? Who's really in charge? There's different ways to do it. But before we go there, like you sort of open the door, Perry, and you know, maybe help educate some coaches out there. If you're the Flames goalie coach now, how do you help Markstrom if we just concede for the moment that yeah, he's having trouble seeing the puck? What kind of things can you do at practice to help him work on that, feel more confident? Because really that's what it comes down here, is building the confidence that, hey, I'm on my game, I'm seeing the puck, I'm feeling good. How would you go about that if you're the Flames goalie coach?
So Tim, great question. Here's how that works for me. And Tim, you actually said it earlier today. Simplify. Like to me, he has to go back to the basics of, you know, one player, one shot. Get used to seeing the release of the shot, because that seems to be what's missing to me. Like he doesn't have his feet set for the shot, which is goalie 101. He's always looking to do more things, and it's like, no, like the puck doesn't care where it's going. But if you see the release, your response is going to be better. I think his setup on the shot is where it starts. So you have to go back to the basics. You have to simplify your game. He's trying to do too much. He's never really set. Pucks are going by him that he's not even moving. And it's like, to me, his skill set is all about, he has to see the release and he will react much better. So it's really about simplify his game, just like you said with a player, make things easier for you to do, and then you'll see different results.
That's sorry, Wally. Oh, yeah. Just wanted to interrupt really quick. Like that's well said, Perry. And I guess my next observation, I seem like a non-Flames fan, but I really am of the view that they're just not a solid group defensively. They've got all kinds of holes, and you know, I didn't hear the news on Tanev. I hope he's not out long term, but that might be part of what's going on in Markstrom's head. Is I've always got to be on the lookout for the next grade A scoring chance that's you know, left wide open because somebody's not doing their job. It just seems to me that they give up even as they outshoot teams in lots of games by wide margins. They give up far too many grade A scoring chances to be a real serious playoff team. Sorry, Wally.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to the minor hockey theme. Two things. The first thing we talk about a little later, some teams just have one goalie. I think, Tim, you had one goalie on your team. I'm not sure what the age is. Tom has one goalie, and he would prefer to have two goalies. So planning a practice with one goalie versus two goalies is different. That's another topic. The other thing, Perry, and I want to address it now because I think this is very valid at any level of hockey, maybe except pro. You said goaltending one-on-one, and what was the skill that you said?
Yeah, you don't get to sharpen your steel by watching other goalies. To me, that's where you learn the most, is by watching other goalies in the net. And then you go, well, I like that, or I don't like that. Both of them are very valid when it comes to growing your game. Like when a goalie wants to train all by themselves, it just doesn't make sense to me at any level, even pro. I don't like it. Like No, I want you to work with this guy, and I want you guys to really feel that competition between each other, but understand you're working for the same common goal, wins at the pro level. It's just about winning.
I just want to talk about minor hockey. The
Yeah.
goaltending 101 is the stance and the feeling of your edges and being square to the puck by being able to move and feel your edges. And I watch goalies in a warm up and goalies having a bad game in minor hockey, and I'm talking AAA, AA, and
Mhm.
any age U18 and under, but minor hockey. And when they're sort of floating in the net and jerking around and they're not stable and solid in their stance, I just have them shuffle skate to feel their edges. I've had pass that on to goalies that have come to the bench, made them shuffle skate right there, be solid in the stance, square to the puck. It's like you say, go back to basics, simplify it.
Mhm.
And with minor hockey kids, that's the thing. They're bouncing around in there. Now, the biggest thing with NHL goalies is I think they're going down too soon. And it's almost like dodgeball, and goaltending is not dodgeball. And the ability to maintain your stance longer, coping with the vision and screening, it's a very big challenge at the pro level. But at the minor hockey level, just make sure they're strong in their stance and square to the puck. And the old shuffling sideways, feeling your edges, it's just fundamental to playing goal and being set and square to the puck. So the other question later is uh, one goalie versus two goalies at practice, at games. What age group, Tim Taylor, what age group is your team?
We're middle. It's a middle school team, so we have the youngest kids are in sixth grade and the oldest are in eighth grade.
So that would be U13.
Yeah, we have some second year you call it U13 in Canada. So we have some second year 12 and under players and some Bantam age kids on the team.
Okay. Well, Tom, you're used to the two goalie scenarios and the flow and the whole ice kind of thing. And how do you adapt with that philosophy of coaching and wanting two goalies? Now you've got one. How do you adapt?
Well, and we get a lot of half ice practices, so you just see, like anything, you see the space you have, the amount of players you have, and you adapt. Like our last practice, we practiced with the other U13 team. So the first half hour we did stuff on our own with one goalie, and then we had a full ice game, but their goalie wasn't there. So we put the net face down, so they had to hit the top of the net for a goal. The one end, you couldn't hit any of the metal, and we played a full ice game that there had to be at least one pass in each zone. And I blew the duck call if they carried the puck too long. So, you just, like in anything, you have to adapt. And the thing about goalie progression, I've got a goalie, she's pretty good, but she's 5 feet tall. So I look at her parents and they're kind of average size. So, she's probably going to end up to be, her mom's probably about 5'5". But, that's the thing in kids hockey, how big are kids going to get? Are they always going to be tiny? Like I remember when I had this team and both Mason Raymond and Ryan Duncan were absolute tiny, tiny, tiny. And Mason grew to be 6 feet and Ryan grew to be 5'6". Ryan won the Hobie Baker, but he never got the good chance at the big league, even though he was really good, because he was just so small. So you never know how they're going to grow, but they're going to grow some anyways. But when I'm coaching minor hockey, I just rotate the goalies game to game, and if they don't have it that day, I'll pull them out, and sometime I'll pull them out and talk to them and put them back in. And it all depends, but so you have every scenario when you coach for a long time, I guess.
Mhm.
Mike Pinelli.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one of the great things I've noticed from the coaching education program over the last few years, especially with USA Hockey, is the emphasis on teaching coaches how to work with your goalies in practice. And when you talk about, a lot of it was like, a lot of the youth hockey stuff at the mite level, 8U and 10U is all about getting the reps in, getting the time in, go, 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 go. A lot of, just keeping kids moving. And I think what ends up happening is we don't allow our goalies then to finish plays. Like, okay, if a shot gets taken, the goalie can track it, freeze it, control it, move it. So I think one of the things that I've done, a lot in the last couple of years is make sure that the coaches that I work with, really put some emphasis on the fact that if you want your goalie to finish a play, then let them finish the play in practice. If you want your goalies to be able to track pucks, then you have to have drills and games that allow them to track pucks. And I think that's something that's really been encouraging for me watching the last couple of years in the coaching education program is that emphasis on the fact that we have to allow the goalies, if we, it's the same thing. If I have a coach that says, hey, Mike, can you help me? My girls just never go to the net. I can't get them to crash the net. I go, well, every drill you have, they shoot at the top of the circle and they go to the line in the corner for the last 25 weeks. So what would you expect them to do in a game? And I think it's the same thing our goaltenders. If we want our goaltenders to set up, if we want our goaltenders to track pucks, if we want our goaltenders to compete until the puck is completely frozen or out of the zone, then we have to design our drills and our practices, to replicate that. And I think that's been done a much better. We've done a much better job at that, I think, the last couple of years.
If I could interject really quick, Perry, on that exact note, Mike, and I totally agree, is, when any of the teams I've worked with, whenever we're playing small area games, you see it a lot. A lot of coaches just allow the goalies to make a save and then throw the puck to somebody or try to move it. I always tell our goalies, hey, freeze the puck if that's the play. Like, play this small area game the way you would play a real game. Don't get into throwing the puck ahead or casually from your knees, moving the puck. Freeze it, and I'll give them a new puck to play. I always preferred that because it develops that good habit versus getting into, sort of summer hockey mode way, way too often. Go ahead, Barry. Sorry.
Yeah, just real quick, just on that point, that's exactly what we'll do. We'll say, oh, well, you will even yell like, ooh, that's a save, and then the kids will know that's the cue to turn around and find the puck from the coach, that there's a new puck now in play. Like that puck, that old puck is no longer in play because the goalie made a save, they froze it, and that's done. And it lets the goalie set up too, right? The puck now goes to a different area of the ice. It allows the goalie to kind of regroup and find their crease again.
Yeah, we just yell out puck, and they know it. And anyway, go ahead, Perry.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up practice now that we get into this part. I've had so many arguments with coaches on, what they want from their goaltender. I have teams that will not allow their goalie to play the puck at any, and this is a competitive AAA team that will not allow their puck to come out, their goalie to come out of the net on a rim, on a dump in. They won't let the goalie play the puck in any situation. Like I've even asked drills, dump the puck in on the goalie to see what they do. It's going to disrupt the flow of the practice. It's like, but that's the game, right? And it's really unfortunate. And this is what I mean about younger coaches. They're so eager to see the drills on YouTube that they think look really flashy because they're so fast, and they want flow drills for 90 minutes, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, but you're not going to flow drill a game. And when you get to practice, your goalies won't come out of the net to play a rim because that's a play with most offensive teams. They're going to rim a puck the other side, so it's an advantage because they know your goalie's not coming out. And if you dump it in, the goalie's totally confused because we never work on it in practice. Like, all I want the goalie to do on a dump in, if you can't catch it, make sure it's going to a quiet area, deflected to the corner. But if you're not working on that in practice, how are you supposed to be good at it? Right. So these things to me are really lacking. And I'm just saying in my area in Ontario, it's not a focus at all for these goalies to be involved in practice. And I've had many conversations and have hit nothing but brick walls. You're just the goalie guy. Make sure the goalie stops the puck. And it's like there's so much more a goalie can do, but okay, we'll do it your way.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I got especially in the girls hockey and even in the college, the goalies, they, if a puck is shot in from the red line or whatever, instead of standing there setting it up, they go down in the butterfly and they put their stick flat on the ice, and some of them want to catch it on the way there where it'll bounce off the glove and bounce out, but then they freeze it. So you get face-offs in your end all the time. And like my goalie right now, every single time, I mean, players could be crossing the blue line and she's freezing the puck already. So what do you do to, get them to set the puck up and all this kind of thing?
A great question. To me, all that is practice. You have to practice these things. Like, if you have a drill with a dump in, what does the goalie do? And get them to think about, okay, my D's coming back, my D's opening and they're showing me their stick. I'm gonna make a play with my stick. I'm gonna paddle down and make a nice pass. Like those are the things that unfortunately a lot of these goalies don't get to work on in practice. With a lot of goalies, the first thing they do if something happens, like say they go to make a pass and the puck goes underneath their stick and in the net, the first thing you do is look at the coach and they see the reaction and they'll never do it again. Where it's like if coaches understood, let them do it. They're gonna make mistakes, but they will get better.
Do you want them
And they
always
will.
going down in the butterfly?
No, not at all. No. That's all situational. Like if it's a hard drifting puck, like you don't want to see that bounce just in front, it goes through. But if it's just a dump in on the ice, make a play. That's all giving them the confidence to make that play, right? What's that? Sorry?
So they should stand up, stop it, and either pass or set it up by the net for the D?
100%.
Because that's
a skill they just have to work on.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Wally, your mic.
Tim Taylor sent out a drill this morning. He had two pairs of pylons, 3 pairs set up in the below the goal line, and the goalie was on the ice in the net, and they were playing 3 versus 3, and they got a point for every pass they completed between the pylons, and they could pass to their goalie. So that, to me, Tom, is an example of a game where they had to get open. The pass had to be made through the pylons, and the goalie was a part of the passing, the receiving, and the passing. So it's sort of like you're jokers, but you're involving the goalie as a joker, and it's a game of keep away and scoring points for every completed pass. And the goalie's on the team with the players with the puck. So I like that. That's a takeaway of Tim's drill this morning. And I really am glad you brought that point up in terms of at what age do you think goalies should be able to handle and pass a puck? And is it this age, U13, Tim? Because you're doing it in a drill, must be working, and they're going to get better and more confident at handling and passing. So I think it's growing pains of learning, and they're going through it. So Hal, and then Kim.
This is really a great point. And a long time ago, I started doing, incorporating goalies into practice because they're lost, especially in minor hockey, youth hockey. So if we're doing breakouts, coming out of neutral ice and going in and breaking out with or without pressure, I'll rim it around. And the goalie's job is to go back and stop it if they can, and put it in a space or leave it and set it up for their player to come. Actually, in our game last night, our goalie picked up one of those errant long pucks that was coming down and fired it back to the blue line, the far blue line where one of his teammates was there. I think goalies need to be encouraged to handle pucks, starting maybe in peewees. I don't know. I haven't coached a peewee team in a long time, but the other thing I do, this is a kind of a fun drill. We haven't done it too much this year, but I have used it for a lot of years. It's a warm-up drill where the kids come out of the corner one at a time. First kid comes with a puck around the top of the circle and passes it to the goalie right there. Opens up and bleeds out, and the goalie passes it to the next skater coming through, and they exchange the puck. And then that player bleeds out the other side, opens up, never turns their back on the puck. And the third player comes out, comes across. So that's a timing drill also. Passes it to the goalie, goalie's got to get it, pass it. And then the goalie makes the pass, the breakout pass for those three skaters. And this is an ugly drill when they first started, but they get better at it, and the goalies build a lot of confidence. And then I have them, if they're not incorporated in some of our skating drills, which they normally are, I will have them pass pucks to each other 20, 30 feet away, chip them off the glass if they have the ability to do that. I just think the best goalies I've ever played against, and I've seen they can handle pucks as well as their defensemen can. And I think it's a really utilized skill for these kids, because most coaches are focused on the other, on the skaters, not the goalies. Easy to incorporate them into these practices. So thanks for listening.
I'm not sure if if the drill you just posted was, I think we used to do one with the when you were at the Oval. I had a couple of goalie specific warm-up drills, and I can pass those on. I can share them with you, Wally. Kim's might be one of them. But, the thing I wanted to interject is going back to Perry's original comment about about a midget AAA team not allowing their goalies to handle puck. Like, what a disservice to a couple of young goalies trying to get better. And you could take it down to Pee Wee Bantam. Goalies being able to, number one, stop a puck on a rim and set it for a D. Like, what a great skill. Number two, even better skill for a goalie, you can stop a puck, make a pass, or stop a puck and put the puck back on the glass or around the boards or someplace. Like, what a terrific skill, what a helpful skill, and what a great team skill. And I know I've told this story before, but when I started working with the Danish women's team, I noticed pretty quickly that and I loved our goalies, Lisa, Cass, Emma, Sophie. We had three real good goalies. I noticed that they would never come out of the net to stop the puck. And it got us in so much trouble. We ended up getting jammed in our zone because we didn't have a chance to get it out. The D's trying to dig it off the boards, or the forecheck gets in on top of them. So I got on Ernst, Frederick Anderson's dad was our goalie coach, and just asked him right away, like, he just said, well, it's not really part of the game that they work on in Europe at all. I said, well, we need it. Like, we need to give ourselves the best chance for clean exits out of the D zone, that sort of thing. And all of our goalies just flourished when we actively encouraged them. Hey, if you can just get out and stop it and get back in the net, that helps. And so they started doing that, and then bang, almost right away, both Lisa and Cass were out of the net on slow rollers and making headman passes. And it just so greatly helped our game and improved our game. So it's just really lamentable to hear coaching. It would be like me coaching a midget AAA team and saying to our D, hey, Perry, you really don't have a great shot. you can never shoot from the blue line. I always want you to dump it back in. I never like just robbing a player of the opportunity to develop and get better. So that's really lamentable. It's every coach's job to really help their players get better. Sorry, Kim.
No need to apologize. And there are coaches that tell their players that in girls hockey, even at younger ages, like, you can't rush. I'm like, ooh, scary.
Ooh.
Oh, I know. Oh, trust me, our first U9 full ice game, it was abundantly clear that the other team had told their defensemen, we don't have positions, their defensemen were not allowed to go over center. They never crossed the center line, Tim. And they were the four who, I don't know how many there were, who could not, they were their worst skaters. And they were told to stand on the red line. So
that is really bad half ice hockey.
That was full ice hockey.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, that's bad.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah, it was not. It was, and yet we still couldn't score on them on breakaways. So there you go. Maybe it worked. They were really big pylons. I just have some thoughts on goalie integration. It's a bit of an art, one that I didn't probably master till much further in my career. Perry said it, you got to communicate with the goalie coach if they're there. I've been fortunate to have some very good goalie coaches when I'm the skills coach and when I'm the head coach. And now those are different environments, but there's definitely times I'm skills coaching the team at one end and there's the goalie coach at the other end, and then the head coach is floating around. That one's probably the toughest to manage because you have a lot of competing priorities. But skills coach and head coach, depending on what skills you're doing, right? Of course, how do you integrate the goalies? Are you just getting the coaches to, there's times we're working on skating or working on a particular skill that I can't integrate the goalie necessarily. And then you've got the assistant coaches or the head coach warming up the goalie on the other end. So I think it's important at the minor hockey level that we give our coaches some basic goalie type drills that they can do. It became very apparent to me when I first started doing that some of the guys were just taking clappers at these kids as their warm up while I was doing skating stuff at the other end. I was like, oh, we might need to give you a little bit more guidance, even if it's just 3 or 4 drills. So that would be my first thing. Don't assume that they know. And also communicating with the goalies. If I'm there as a skills coach and the goalies are going to be integrated in a particular way, hey, we're going to do a bunch of rims here, or you're going to get a ton of 2-on-0s. Sorry, not sorry. Or even just as they're warming up, skating around, just touching base with the goalies and giving them an idea of what to expect in practice, I think is thoughtful. Especially if you know that they're just not going to get a lot of help if we're just working on entries all day. They're going to be in trouble. I forget who said it, but way too many flow drills. I think there's 1 flow drill I like, or 2 now, although I used to use a lot more, but so many shots off entries, right? And again, I only coach the girls. The percentage of those shots that go in are infinitely low, right? It's just, we don't want to shoot through screens. We want to get a completely open shot. We pass when we should be shooting. It's not good. So it's really that second opportunity off the rebound or off when we, test to see if the glass is working and we miss the net. Those are the ones for my players that we're going to score more goals on. They're also the shots our goalies are going to see more of in a game situation because those shots off entry aren't typically going in or generating even a scoring chance to begin with. So I would say, adjust your drills based to what your team is seeing from your competition. What I'm seeing in competition, say for our U9 team is well, I guess our goalies need to be able to stop breakaways because that seems to be where the lion's share of shot opportunities are coming, right? There's not a lot of shots through screens in U9 at this level. But I would say when I go in and coaches are saying, well, we can't score, and they look at their practice plans and I'm like, well, all you're ever doing is working on shots off entry, or our goalie always gets beat. Well, what kind of goals is she getting beat on? Well, usually not clear ones off entries, usually the messy stuff from down low. So even just starting drills where pucks are below the goal line, or as someone said earlier, right, those second pucks that you throw in after they do the little flowy part of the drill, the ones you put behind the net, the ones that make you have the goalies play. that's obviously a little bit of the art of coaching, but just having experience. And I'm a big fan of, even if you are doing kind of flowy warm-up drills, everything's got to be below the knees. You're only shooting block or side, or it's got to be a backhand. Like when you tell them it's got to be a backhand, it's very eye-opening how horrific many of their backhands are, right? And also the goalie's inability maybe to track the backhand effectively. But those are little tidbits I give our coaches, just to enhance their practices, whether it's them or their skills coach there or with their goalie coach. But all those little bits help in terms of giving them a better experience. And Tim, that 2-on-0 goalie pass is not a warm-up drill for us, but it is by far the most requested game by the players that we have. And other than Ring of Fire, where like the goalies are just getting a million shots on that little 3-on-1 off center circle, but you don't make a lot of friends with the goalies with Ring of Fire. But they like the goalie pass too. So that one's a fan favorite. So I figured I'd share.
Stop the puck, goalie. Stop the puck.
Yeah, it's how, I mean, really, I've never done it my whole life, Perry, ever. 0% experience. 0%. Couldn't tell you. And if I tried it now, I'd probably never get back up. But yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Rick. Rick.
Yeah, I just want to hitchhike a little bit. Perry and Tim, yourself, Kim, all brought it up. Coaches that are narrowing the training field for their teams. For me, what our coaches should be doing, what all of us should be doing, is in introducing and instilling all of the aspects of the game, whether it's goaltenders wandering, goaltenders initiating breakouts, players, the one that Kim referenced where they don't allow them to go beyond center ice because obviously they're not capable of getting back quick enough, I'm assuming. But too many coaches are trying to win for today or win for this season in any way they can with the assets and player talent that they have, and overlooking the fact that their primary objective is to prepare these kids to move on to the next team, to give them as broad a knowledge and as broad a skill set as they can possibly instill so that they're ready to encounter anything that comes from the next coach and the next level of competition that they get to. I think if we can get that point across to a lot of the coaches, particularly the new ones, because they're more susceptible to learning, we're going to do a better job for the kids that we're working with.
Yeah, Wally, so...
And if, sorry, Tim,
I
just finish. Yeah, no, I had a second thought there. The idea of players making mistakes, so you bench them or you forbid them to be able to do certain things because they don't do them well. I've often given, in fact, in a practice the other night, I was working with a team. If you're not making any mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. Only by making them will you learn from them. I'm not encouraging you to make them over and over again. I'm encouraging you to learn from them, but you've got to have that experience personally to understand the consequences of that mistake and how to do it right the next time or do it better the next time. There may not be a right way, but there's obviously going to be a better way. Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, no problem. And Wally, I was just gonna say, Wally, remind me sometime if I forget. I will send you on paper a PDF of the goalie warm-up drill that we used to always do. There's a rim pass that's a 2-on-0 drill, and there's a one where you spot the puck to the goalie, and it's actually a 1-on-0 with a fall, but it's a flow drill to actually let the goalies practice handling the puck. And obviously to just for 5 or 8 minutes, let the players loosen up a bit, get a sweat going. But it's a good warm-up drill I've used with all my teams. Remind me, I'll send that out so you can share it. Your mic, Wally.
I got two things. The first thing, the problem we've always had over our generations of coaching and even playing, warming up the goalies, is 2 shots hitting the goalie at one time. Has anybody encountered that recently? Well, we got that down. Okay. Well, I just wanted to share that when you have shots one after the other, regardless of how the drill ends, specifying the specific shooter where to shoot. All glove high to warm up, all blocker, all low, both sides, before you randomize it. And the key to the goalie, Barry, one thing I've found for me is when you have multiple pucks in the neutral zone and the shooters are just reading who's shooting and who's next, the goalie has to lock on, make eye contact with the shooter. So the first lesson is deliberate shooting, but the goalie to lock on with the person taking the shot. And everybody else has to save ice, turn back, delay before they go in and shoot again. So that's something that's worked well for me. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is sort of the sad state of affairs in hockey related to coaching and coaches telling their players what to do in a way that it brings tears rather than smiles. I got a phone call from a lady whose grandson was playing minor hockey, and she talks to me quite often. She's a former teacher, and she said, this boy has been doing some special work at a club, learning to skate pretty well and carry a puck. He's become the top scorer on the team. And the coach has told him just not to carry the puck anymore and to just get it out of the zone. And that was, the kid's the leading scorer, and he is a coast player. But the way he did it brought the boy to tears, and they're trying to deal with that now. So the competency of coaching on the behavioral side in terms of, it's one thing to have them stand on the red line and not go past it. It's another thing to yell at them and raise your voice when they don't do that. And especially when it's something that doesn't make sense in the first place. So that's the challenge of some of the coaching that's going on today. Rick?
Sorry, I just forgot to take my hand down earlier, Wally.
Well, Wally, I'll share a more positive comment then, I guess, for goalies is, we started off the season asking kids like, hey, who wants to play goalie next game for the U9s? And there was some trepidation. And then all of a sudden we realized like everyone was putting up their hand. Like, this is weird. I mean, exciting for Perry and goalie coaches, but I'm like, why are they all putting up their hands all of a sudden? Like, we realized, after some reflection, like we do player of the game, you give shout outs after every game. I'm pretty like energetic in the room after the game, excited. And we were always like shouting out the goalies. And sometimes they were the only ones getting the shout outs. Like, hey, great job, girls. Like, you did awesome. Because I'm trying to encourage them because actually they weren't great, but like, you put up your hand. So thanks. And then I asked my daughter, I said, Sasha, why did you put up your hand to play goalie? She goes, oh, because they always get they always get to like, you tell them how good they are. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, not that I'm going to stop telling them how good they are, but it was interesting that was like such a motivator for them to get that shout out after like that little thing, right? And you've got to remember, most of these girls, this is their first time playing really organized hockey. They're all from house league. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit to share for goalie world. And I shared another drill. Clearly I'm uncoach them too often. But this is one I use a lot with the teams I work with, and because it starts with the puck next to the net and forces the player actually to go get the puck from the net, and it gets driven from down low. But, especially with like middle age groups in girls hockey, U11, U13, U15, so many of the goals and offense is generated off that low to high pass. And when I say high, I mean like low to hash marks pass. It just gets shoved in the net. Not to say that that's necessarily the best goal or all the goals, but the ability to execute on that seems to be pretty high. And then, just encouraging those players to get lost in the slot and find open space. Anyways, it's a drill that I think Perry could correct me if I'm wrong, is a good one for the goalies, for sure, to get them looking around and defending those types of plays. Good for the attackers. We don't do forward and D usually. It's everyone does everything. Also good for the defenders in it not to throw the puck back up the middle of the ice, to clear it out into the gray areas. So checks a lot of boxes, and most of the coaches I work with after we run it, they use it all the time. So that's a good one that kind of meets everyone in a good spot. But definitely, have forwards and Ds rotating and not always playing the same position.
Oh, okay, Kim. Unconditional love for the goalies. All appreciate it. Some require it. But not surprising, I guess. Go ahead, Hal.
That's a great story, Kim. When my son started to play hockey, he was 9 years old. And I'd already been coaching for 25 years, I think. And he wanted to play goalie. And I said, well, why? And he goes, well, because everybody pats you on the back after the game. And he liked the equipment. So my deal I made with him was, I will take you to goalie training this year and maybe next year, but you have to learn to play the game first. And you have to learn to skate. And so we did that. I took him to Rob Stauber's goalie school. They have a mini indoor rink, and they had, he had goalie training for 2 years, but he also learned to play defense. And he also realized something else in the program we were in at that time. A lot of teams. I mean, the program's got 1,200 kids in it. Every level has 6, 8, 9 teams and 15 to 20 goalies. He realized that the funnel would get real narrow real fast. He might not get a chance to play, and so then he decided that maybe playing defense was a much better option, because there's 4 of them or 6 of them on the team and only 2 goalies, but every team needs a good defenseman. So he abandoned that idea of playing goalie and went on and had a pretty good hockey career for a kid that started pretty late. So, but it's the idea of getting your patted on the back all the time, as Kim mentioned, is kind of appealing to young kids. They like the attention. So that's that story.
Well, Hal, just to piggyback on that's interesting. I think in girls hockey, if you're a goalie, like, you can pretty much write your ticket. We have far too many teams in Ontario, and I don't mean that I just mean there's so many teams that that's actually I help our association figure out how many teams to have at every age group and every level, which you can imagine is quite arduous with 1,600 players. And the biggest thing is like, well, do we have enough goalies this time? Like, you lose 2 goalies in an age group. With us, like at the U18 level, we have 9 teams at that level, competitive level, right? And one of the coaches just called us and said both his goalies have decided not to play next year, are going to focus on academics. Amazing, great. But now we have to decide whether we, chop a team out because they just don't have enough goalies. And it's, there are a few goalies in our organization who are, playing a little higher than their pay grade, simply because they're there and they're goalies. So I think that we have the flip problem that anyone who's like wants to be a goalie at our association is like, I'm going to be playing rep hockey the rest of the way through and have my pick of the litter. And I don't know if that's the case for other girls' organizations, and we just happen to be so big. But we really do have an issue with having enough goalies, and we do have free goalie training programs for both our house league and our competitive level that are weekly. So it's 2 hours back to back. The first hour is house league, second hour is competitive, and there's no extra cost to attend those. And we've got one of the pro female goalies runs them. So, I mean, it's amazing that we have that there, but it's still not enough, I guess, to entice enough of the players to become full-time goalies. So I would, ask the group if there's something else that has been successful in terms of getting higher numbers for goalie, either retention or goalie recruitment. We just don't have enough to field as many teams as we can field player-wise.
We're struggling in all our programs here, and I'm lucky. I have 2 goalies for the first time And actually, when I coached high school, I only had one goalie for 4 years. And that goalie owns you. And he was pretty good. He went on and played Division I hockey. But I'm thinking about it in this whole conversation today with youth hockey is, and we've mentioned this before, we maybe have, I'm going to tell our association, we need to decide how many teams we're going to have based on how many goalies that we have. If we don't have enough goalies, we may have to cut back on some teams because it's, you can't play without them. And really, one is insufficient. But I think in many cases, the teams only play one of their two goalies in the games, and the other one sits on the bench a lot. And, the kids come to play, not watch. And so they need to have, goalies need to have a lot of extra love, and they need the training and they need the support. When I coached in Wayzata, actually, they had a whole storeroom full of equipment. And the kids that wanted to play goal at the younger ages could come in and get fully outfitted with used equipment that the association just loaned to them so they could try it. But then you can't bring them up and just ignore them. You have to really give them a lot of support. And I think it's an issue. Not only girls, this is boys too. Mm-hmm. My girls team last 2 years, one goalie. It's hard. It's hard to coach to, and it's hard on teams, I think. So, anybody got any solutions? I think Wally probably does. I see his hands up. But your mic's off.
It's your mic, Wally.
How could you play goal until you're 18 or 16 and quit? And why are you short of goalies? And to me, the reason is simple. You don't play your second goalie. They don't grow up getting opportunities to develop and play and enjoy the game.
That doesn't really happen in our association, Wally. It's very rare that they're not equally balanced, even up to our AA teams. I would say there's maybe one or two teams out of our 32 each season where they have an alternative rotation other than every other one. Usually our junior team, if one of the goalies is just not even close, you take her up from midget, she just can't get it done. Yep. You might go 2/3, 1/3. And on a very rare occasion, one of our younger teams might have a rotation. And usually that gets filtered through me first, or I help manage that conversation with the parents. But we almost always have you go, I go. For us at U18, it's amazing. We have so many rep teams at the U18 level. It's wonderful, right? But, you do get, we're in an affluent community where many of our players are very driven academically. They're not going to be playing hockey at the next level. So in grade 11 and 12, they're at a private school. They're trying to get straight A's to get into McGill, U of T, whatever it is. They just drop the hockey for that reason. I think also one of the challenges with the older teams is they get the late ice times. And like if you have Friday night practice and you're not really into hockey and it's grade 12, like you're probably out. I don't know, maybe. I don't think the Friday night practices are highly attended by those lower level rep teams, but that's just, it is what it is. We can't give them 7:00 practice. That's when the 11-year-olds have to practice. But I think for us, it's more, if I look at our U11 teams, all of them only have one goalie. And so then you go, okay, well, where are they magically going to come from for U13? Where are they magically going to come from, right? And if each age group in the double cohort, we can only support one goalie per. I know, me and the president of our association have brainstormed ideas like let the goalies play for free. We already have like Hal said, we have the massive room full of equipment. We've got the free goalie training. All our rep teams have to have a goalie coach come to their practices. We're pretty much set up for success that way. I think maybe letting them play for free could be. I don't know that that is our like socioeconomic demographic that's necessarily going to entice people. Like, I don't know that that would be a game changer for them. But it's not sustainable. It's certainly frustrating every year to have to go, oh, do we have enough? Will we have enough? Especially, it seems to be more like the double B and B levels. I think the double A and A, the highest level goalies, go wherever they think the teams are the best. But let's let Perry solve the problem for us. Perry's the pro. How do I get more goalies, Perry?
Well, part of the problem for me is, and I see it a lot here too. Too many players are being discouraged from being goalies because of the cost of goalie equipment. Like to outfit a 10-year-old safely in hockey right now is anywhere between $3,500, $5,000 to outfit a goalie, and not every family's willing or capable to do that. And when you talk about used equipment, a lot of it is just not geared to today's game. The knee cradles are just not there because that was with the old gear. You didn't have to go down like the goalies do now, so you don't need all that padding. And when they put that old gear on, they go down the first time, it hurts. So then they're over it. They don't want to play anymore. So the biggest challenge to me is to find ways to get a little bit cheaper goalie gear out there so these goalies can still play without breaking the bank.
Anybody else have any comments on not enough goalies? Rick?
Well, I'm not sure this would help get more goalies, but one of the issues that I've run into over the years is carding issues. You get 19 player cards here for a minor youth hockey team. 2 of them are goalie cards, and as soon as you assign a player, whether he's 19, 18, or 9, to a goalie card, he's restricted. He can't play as a skater. And one of the avenues I've used with 2 goalies, and sometimes 2 goalies between 2 teams that are affiliated, is to card all the players as skaters. Then they can play goal or whatever from game to game. It's not a solution to the problem, but it is a method of dealing with a situation where you don't have enough to field all the teams, but you can give them more versatility to move back and forth. And for the second goalie who is not playing in any given game, I don't see any issue in, if you're not playing goal today, you can be a D-man or you can be a center or a winger. But we restrict it just by the regulations of carding in too many cases in my experience.
Goalies can't live without them. Hard to live with them sometimes.
You got it.
So can you not sign card a goalie and everybody's a player and then they can play goal, whoever chooses to?
If you don't need 19 cards, you can sign 16 players as skaters, even though 2 of them are goaltenders.
Yeah.
So either one can play goal on any given night, and on that night, the other fella can or gal can drop, move up and play as a defenseman or a forward. But as soon as you sign them to a goalie card, they're restricted. They're not eligible to be skaters.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, but it's been there forever.
Yeah. We've done a lot of things forever. Change is difficult, but that makes absolute sense to me. It's a way of satisfaction of playing in the game and staying in the game and getting more development opportunity as a goalie. And like Sammy Joe mentioned, she plays defense in her ladies league.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know who makes rule changes or suggestions, but I wonder if anybody could do that without just on their own saying, well, we're signing all the players to player cards. And so they can play out if they're not playing goal. Is that possible, plausible, legal?
I've done it in the past.
Okay, makes sense. Suggestion. That's a good suggestion. I think a great idea. Kim, you prepared a boatload of topics that stem from our conversation last week. Do you have any other questions or insights that might lead to further discussion on goaltending? I have developed like some fundamental movement exercises with goalies that I can do when I'm an assistant coach and the coach wants to work on other things, and I'm comfortable with it. They're all movement, stable balance, proper stance, mirroring your other goaltender in movements, laterally, forwards and backwards. And that's all I do is focus on the stance. Now, when I was scouting, looking at goalies, sort of we all rely on the goalie coach. At least I did for most goalie selections with national camps. I didn't really look at them that closely. Look at their behaviors, look at their technique, look at their compete. But I did have as a scout a very simple observation. Number one, they have to stop the first shot. If they don't, we're probably not watching. If they stop the first and second shots, we're going to watch them. If they can stop the 3 shots in a row, you might be seriously keeping him. And it's nothing to do with the those techniques, the nuances, just the ability to stop the puck. And over many years, there's been some pretty good goalies that we wouldn't consider as being very technical that stop the puck. And Dominic Hasek might be the best one. And you might call him unorthodox, but the level of compete is amazing in some goaltenders. And I look for that intangible quality in players, skaters as well. The level of compete is critical. But with a goalie, it comes through the character of compete. And not all kids have it. And not all players have that level of compete. But it's certainly becoming a scouting quality to look for that will make players get to a level we never imagined. So, Perry, go ahead.
Yeah, on a note, you mentioned Dominic Hasek. The one thing that he did that not a lot of people know is that, with all the crazy moves that he made, I wish I still had it. I had a collage of him, and it was probably 30 to 40 different slides. And every one of those slides in various body positions, his eyes were always on the puck. It's absolutely phenomenal. His ability to see the release of the shot, no matter when it's coming. And he would do whatever it took to stop that puck. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that he was doing was seeing the puck. And it sounds really simple, but it's not. So when you talk about compete is great, but compete with seeing the puck too, phenomenal. And that's what he was. Anyway, I do have to leave soon, unfortunately. I have another call at 12:30, but I can't thank you guys enough for this call. I thought it was amazing. What a great panel that you've put together, Wally, of great hockey experts. And that's what I'll call these guys and ladies. I just love it. Seeing you, Kim. Great to see you. Wally, I can't thank you enough for the ability to be on this call. So thank you.
Perry, take care.
Great to have you, Perry.
Join us anytime, Perry.
I will do that. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Tim, have a great day. Everyone else, have a great day. Right? Take care, guys. See you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Here, Perry.
Rick?
Yeah, just to hitchhike on what Perry just said about Dominic Hasek, you might remember a fellow named Kippersoft that played here for a day or two.
Same one.
One of the things that always struck me about him, he never lost sight of the puck. He had a bearing on it coming in, and he knew exactly where it went. And if he didn't, he sure found it in a hurry. It is a key component of good goaltending. Being totally aware as often as much as possible as to where the puck is.
Oh, I wish Perry had stayed on because I went to a clinic, and NHL, former NHL player now coaching, was doing a clinic, and he talked about teaching defense, well, how to play 2-on-1s. And the question I had was, we teach the defense to prevent the pass across, to delay the outside carry, and don't get beat. And one thing this clinician did with minor hockey coaches, and they were AA and above, he talked about Kiprasov, and he wanted the attacker to overplay the puck carrier so he would throw it across. So Kiprasov made that save because it was coached for. So I mentioned to him that, look, we're working with minor hockey coaches here, and we sort of are reared in a fundamental way to teach how to play 2-on-1s. And now all of a sudden, we've got this new technique of pressuring the puck. And I was a little concerned that fundamentally we're sort of conditioned to teaching a D how to play a 1-on-1 and a 2-on-1. Do you lay out, but you prevent that pass across. And in this case, you're encouraging it, and it worked for Kiprasov. I'm not sure at what level, now you're a coach, you create a tactic that's specific to allowing your goalie to be the best player on the team. At what age? Does that make sense here? Am I concerned? Anybody? Rick?
Well, my first thought on that, Wally, was a little bit of what I referred to earlier, where we're changing the game dramatically for one group of people. When they move on to a more traditional style of coaching, they're going to be poorly trained to deal with that. And I'm still advocate that we teach the basic ground rules of the game, and then when you get to a certain level where it's going to be exclusively in that group, yeah, you can do those things. But I wouldn't suggest what the Kiprasov method to many kids in particular, because you're only going to set them up for disagreement with coaching as they move on up the line.
Okay. Anybody, anything else to add on the goaltending side?
I would just add, Wally, like on that point, I'm just again thinking about my U9s and even the U11s I coached. Like, I don't think that's a bad strategy. Like, again, at least as a skill set. Like, for example, we teach our players to wheel it out no matter what right now. And they say, well, what if there's, we say, don't worry about what if there's, just wheel. Try to hold on to the puck, right? See how long you can sustain it. Is that what I want them to do in junior hockey? Absolutely not. But based on their strengths right now, it actually makes a lot of sense, right? For the first half of this season, we told the U9 players, just hunt everybody down. We've just started doing 2-on-1s. And I would say the most effective strategy is going to be to hunt the puck carrier, because the chances of her making a pass through pressure and the other person being in the right place or receiving the pass is way less than our players' ability to attack the puck carrier and create a turnover. And I would argue that might still be the case in U11, but it has to be taught in a message of this is a tool to use, as opposed to this is always the right way to play a 2-on-1, right? But I think in the female game, at least, and certainly at the younger, lower levels, right, the more aggressive you are, the more it's going to work in your favor, right? The ability of players to execute tape to tape and make, east-west passes that create scoring chances, generally at the double B and B levels and at the younger age groups, is a much weaker skill than their ability to skate in and shoot it uncontested on the goalie. But again, as Tim always says, it's never, never, and always, always, or whatever it is. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. I didn't go to Brown, but yeah, so that would, for me, I would do that at the young age groups for sure. I would teach that. or at least more aggressive to the puck carrier, and see if they can make that pass. And hey, if at U9 those girls can make that pass and score off that pass, I mean, God bless them. Good job, guys. But if for team success, I would teach them to hunt that puck carrier.
A number 1 draft pick, played in the NHL, running a conditioning camp, doing 2-on-1s, and he came up and told me, and played for Chicago. He said, "No, we take the puck carrier all the time. We force them to make a mistake early." My fear of doing it at a young age, Kim, is we've been reared on conventional playing of defense. And are we going to lose the ability to transition skate forwards to backwards? Because now we talk about surfing the puck carrier in all 3 zones, particularly the neutral zone, but now in the defensive zone. So the balance of transition skating, backward striding, mohawk pivoting, and the way we've taught how to play 1-on-1s was always a mohawk, not a surf. So I don't know. I'm like you, Kim. I wouldn't do it that young, but if it's going to get results, but at what stage is backward skating not essential and pivoting not going to be a part of the game? Will they not develop it? So, Tim, go ahead.
Just really quickly, at no stage will backward skating be unimportant or pivoting be unimportant. No matter what the development of the game, I would argue that they're still essential skills because, well, the game's not going to change that much. You still have to be able to skate backwards efficiently and effectively and pivot efficiently and effectively. And I'm sorry because I just jumped out to tend to the kitty and get a cup of coffee. If we were talking defending 2-on-1s, were you just recently?
Yeah, we're talking about Kiprusoff and the fact that whoever was coaching at the time was doing a clinic, and he talked about we let Kiprusoff have the drive skater on the wide side. That was, he wanted him. He demanded it, and he made great saves that way. That's the way they played 2-on-1. So they pressured the puck carrier on the drive. And I question the doing that at a coaching clinic to AA and AAA coaches, and now all coaches beginning to adapt that technique. And what would happen in terms of development? Might increase outcomes. I guess if Perry was on and say, this might be a question. It's good for the goalies if they move well laterally and they're small, but I don't know. It's just a new way of looking at things and thinking about things. And Kim, your U9s, U11s, it does make sense in terms of competing, but like Tim said, relying on the still mastering all skills, all direction skating, with and without a puck at all positions. And positions are interchangeable. Today, there's much more interchangeability. Defense are involved in forward and direct attacks. And forwards have to cover behind. So it's all good discussion. I think it really makes sense. I'm not sure what I would do. So what are you going to do, Kim? Are you debating, advocating it now?
No, well, there's lots of subtlety here. Like, for starters, if you have a goalie like Kiprusoff at the elite level, and maybe you could say that's Bantam, AAA, and higher. If you have a goalie that says, "I want you to pressure the puck carrier because I'll take the off puck player and I'll take that breakaway." If you have a goalie that wants that, have at it, give it to him, because you could break up a lot of plays. But the flip side of that really is, if the goalie really wants that, why don't you give it to him and take away the pass all the time? Like, it's the same situation. And granted, the one difference is you don't have that opportunity to break up the pass. So I get that. But the other piece I would add is, and maybe this is something you could work with your U9s with, Kim, is the D recognizing is the player with the puck. Is her stick inside or outside? If it's inside, coming down the middle of the rink, two things. They have a better shooting angle on the goalie, making it harder for the goalie. The other thing is, if you can get them on their backhand by pressuring the puck, it's way tougher for them, especially U9s, but at any level, to make a good pass on their backhand to the open player. So that's maybe a starting point for pressuring on a 2-on-1, which I generally don't agree with, is if the stick is on the inside, then a better opportunity to pressure and a better situation to pressure in versus if it's on the outside. And that's, some detail, but even just that at a really young level, if the stick's on the inside, better chance to pressure. If it's on the outside, maybe give it more to the goalie. But the last thing and the most important thing for me is the D should always, once the puck is starting to get inside the circle tops, the D should always be in the prime scoring area. And you see it time and time and time and time again. NHL level, doesn't matter, where the D gets way outside at the dot line and gives up a clean breakaway down the middle. Like, that just makes 0 sense to me. 0 sense.
Okay,
Especially with all the Royal Road studies where even at the most elite levels, you should never score. Like, you score 1% of the time from outside the dot line. Why would you move outside there and give up a prime scoring chance down the middle? Makes 0 sense to me.
See, I'm sort of thinking about what Kim said and before we get to Hal and Kim, and I'm thinking when you pressure the puck carrier all the time, it's in keeping with Kim's system of play. Always pressure the puck. If you're closest, pressure the puck. It reduces the options, provides less in time and space for the carrier, and it makes sense. Now we're conditioned to the situational possibilities of a 2-on-1 attack versus you're limiting the possibilities. And it's easier to skate forward in pressure and do that. So I'm scratching my head now, but I didn't play defense, but I did work with the national team on defensive tactical skills. And we spent so much time on transitional forward to backward skating and playing those situations. And this sort of does make a little bit of sense. And I guess it's worth discussing. So
I'll just interject before they go. You're also making less time for back checker help, and you're less time for rebound help if a shot does come. The longer you delay, the more time for back checkers to get back and help, the more time for back checkers to be in position to deny a second chance, which often results. There's no right answer. It's just all philosophy, but I'm definitely not a give the goalie a breakaway kind of guy. That's a grade AA chance. A 2-on-1 is a grade A chance, and I'll take my chances with the grade A. With that Kiprusoff exception. If you want a goalie that wants that, then give it to him. Or her.
Kim, your level, and then we'll go to Hal.
Yeah, I'm just playing with drills here. I sent you guys one and then I realized I forgot one. So I've been, to all your points, I've been doing some backward skating and some pivoting. So it's all getting addressed now that we're at full ice. Don't you worry. C cuts are coming out. And so I just sent the progression we've been doing the last 2 weeks. And it's worked out really well. It's just a basic 1-on-1 where there's no puck. So I think you can see there, like the attacker is on the red line, the defender's on the dot line, blue line. And it's a one-on-one, but it's a race to the blue ice. So there's no puck. And so the trigger we used, and on the practice ice we're on, the neutral zone is tiny. So the cue we've given the backward skater is she can't turn to go forwards until the attacker has crossed the blue line. And the timing of that, I kind of figured out, works really well for our age group, but they have to take some number of backward strides first before they can turn facing the player and try to beat them into the blue ice. And we've done that every practice. So certainly the practices we have no goalies. There's no puck, but just that intention of turning and winning the race to the blue ice, I think is a really strong one, whether there was a puck or not, right? I mean, this is, if you get beat, you got to get back to the blue ice. If she's going to the blue ice, you got to get to the blue ice. So we started there. The coaches kind of gave me a weird look. They're like, that's not really a one-on-one. I'm like, no, this is the essence of a one-on-one. Then we added a puck, same drill. And then I actually made it a 1-on-2 next. Again, to increase that hunter's wanting and willingness to go and hunt the puck, right? Because of course we don't want both these backing in when it's only one puck carrier, but I see it all the time at U9 and U11 when players have been told, oh, well, you just back in. And then we make it a 2-on-1, then we make it a 2-on-2. So the girls kind of get the drills now. We've done it, I think, in about 4 practices. And so they know the turn and go drills. So we've got a tournament this weekend. We got 4 games. And we're setting goals for them this weekend for the 4 games. And what we've said is for each game, we want 3 great defensive hunts. That's the goal. So 3 great turn and goes where you hunt the girl down. And then that's, if they get the 3 a game, then we get a check mark. But any breakaways we give up is a -1, right? So it's kind of enticing them because we've given them this skill set now of turning and going, right? And now they've got a concrete goal for the tournament in each game to try to limit breakaways and maximize the number of time they hunt down the puck carrier. So, just simple, like they're so simple drills, but we'll see this weekend if they seem to have the performance effect we want. And we don't have, Ds per se. So everybody is doing those drills. And, we haven't even talked to the attackers about how to exploit that yet, because most of them will just skate down the wall. So we'll get there. I think that's where being able to teach these players something, like this is the first time they've ever heard probably what a 2-on-1 is their whole life. Like they're so new. It's actually really exciting. And it's fun for me to go, okay, like what's the most important thing here? Is probably winning the race back to the blue ice. Like to me, that's the most important thing that's going to translate, and then layering it on above that. So, you know what? It's worked out well, and it has with every team we play against. Again, there's 5 kids on every team who are way better than everybody else. They're not going to do great under pressure. They're going to do great in open ice, right? So it's a bit of it leads to success on a team level, but having watched so many of the older girls and older age groups, they're so timid. They go, like, it's not physical enough. There's not enough pressure put on properly. So if I can plant that seed early, I don't know. I think it will fare well for our girls in the long term.
Hell.
Yeah, I think there's actually a number of topics in that, and thanks, Kim, for sharing what you're doing. For these, I think there's a difference between girls and boys. Number one, I hate to say that, but my experience coaching them, even at the high school level, is they prefer to pass unnecessarily, and they will take themselves out of a great scoring position to pass to their friend. May or may not be in a good scoring position or get it done. What I've always, for many years working on 2-on-1s, my philosophy is obviously the defenseman has to go backwards, but then we have this conversation about who's the most dangerous player, the puck carrier or the non-puck carrier. And in my mind, it's the non-puck carrier is the most dangerous and likely to score. And so you sort of play them 50-50, maybe as you get across the blue line and start backing up towards your net. if the puck carrier stays outside, that's an easy save for my goalie. Okay, and so I tell my defenseman, our goal is to force him to shoot because he's running out of time and space. And if he doesn't have a clear passing opportunity because you now are drifting over towards and you're plugging up his passing lane, going to shoot it. And I tell him, I says, if it goes in, it's on the goalie. Because the goalie's had 60 feet to watch him come in and take that shot. But if you pivot and go to the puck, and as soon as you pivot and go to the puck, and the puck goes to the guy in front, now he's got a shooting goalie. He's got a moving goalie. Odds go up significantly that you're going to get scored on. But I also tell kids, when at the end of the play, when you come to the bench, you want the coach to yell at somebody else, not you. And so, take care of the business. So it's sort of a 50-50, and then it becomes like a 40-30. I mean, but then when you get down on the hash marks, great. As Tim said, you got to just be ready to battle in the paint and in front of the net, 2 hands on your stick, because you don't want that puck carrier to get underneath you and go one-on-one against your goalie because you've given them the space to do it. So it's about a compression on the part of that D, and the D's got to skate really well to do that, and they have to really understand what's going on around them. Puck carrier is probably going to be right-handed because most everybody is now. But oftentimes the second skater is going to be left-handed, is going to be right-handed also. And they really don't have a good opportunity to score a goal at the younger ages unless they've learned to open up and catch a puck, in a variety of locations. So I like to keep it simple. But they really have to skate. We got scored on last night on a 2-on-1 because the defenseman can't skate worth a damn. And he got going and he got behind, so he tried to turn and keep up, and he fell down. And it was an easy goal for the other team. And so this game is so much skating, forwards, but also backwards. I just focus on backwards skating so much for all my players, forwards, defensemen, everybody. Because if you can't do that, you're never going to be successful at higher levels. And so now what Kim's working with these younger girls, having coached younger girls, you're right. You've got 1 or 2 kids that can go, and they dominate. And the rest of them are perfectly happy to let them do that, unfortunately. And but to defend against them, all you have to do is defend against 1 or 2 skaters on the other team. And who said goodbye? Rick? Bye, Rick. Is that you saying goodbye?
Yeah.
I got to go too. Hey, guys, it was wonderful as usual.
Al, I just want to
Catch up
interject.
next week, okay?
Al,
Go ahead, Tom. Rick.
just want to
Tom wants
interject
to
one
say
thing.
something on the topic. Go ahead, Tom.
It's opposite here with the girls I coach. They almost all shoot left. We only have about 3 right shots on our team. And I notice when I do camps in the States, people shoot right way more than they do here. And they don't pass. Like we work on passing all the time. And up until the blue line, they'll pass the puck. But as soon as they cross the blue line, the blinders go on. And people can be wide open, which they often are, and they don't see them. They just gonna go take a shot. So it's it's a different situation than you're talking about. Left-handed shot, they don't pass, and they'd rather score.
A discussion we've had before, and maybe for another day, like the stats say that basically I think 65% of right-handed people shoot left in Canada and Europe, but 60 or more percent of right-handed people shoot right in the US. It's a very weird stat. It probably has something to do with baseball, but
I got a theory about that. My theory is that they go into stores, maybe not in Minnesota, but other places where hockey isn't really big, and they say, I'm going to start playing hockey, and the salesperson says, well, are you right or left-handed? And they'll say, well, right, and they'll give them a right-handed stick. So they start like that. That's, I don't know, probably no validity to that theory, but that's my theory.
Yeah, could be. And like I think we talked about it again a bit with Morris before too. We got to get Morris back on here too. But you know, a little bit about the baseball thing too. Like usually if you're right-handed, you usually bat right in baseball. So I think it might partially come from that. We'll never know, I guess. But one thing I was thinking before, we were talking about the 2-on-1s and, you know, do you give up the shot or the breakaway? Because I was thinking about it the other day because I saw it like, God, I think 3 or 4 times this past week, a couple in the NHL, some in the U18 games. I would love to know the scoring percentage, obviously at various levels. We could start with the NHL. What's the scoring percentage on all breakaways that happen? What's the scoring percentage on break-ins where, say, from the circle top down, somebody gets a pass and all of a sudden it's a bang, bang, it's a little mini breakaway, because that's a different situation and more similar to what a 2-on-1 might bring. And also, what's the scoring percentage in shootouts across the board? They would be interesting stats. And I'm always fascinated how, generally speaking, until the last 5 or so years, generally in hockey, we talk generalities a lot, and nobody does the statistical analysis of what are the stats in these situations. These are probably out there somewhere, but I would love to know what they are, actually.
Well, you know what I've noticed in the last couple of years, Tim, is that it's incredible how many 2-on-1s, and it looks like the D's playing pretty good, but they get that pass across the Royal Road and the guy's, hammers it into the net.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think more than it used to be. It's incredible how many 2-on-1s are really successful.
Yeah, and the other stat thing I started looking at it just on a casual basis, and we talked a bit about this before, but the power play breakout, like the drop pass with 2 guys behind or 2 women behind, power play breakout is really tough to defend. And I would love to know, as you start tracking it, like I bet when teams use that and execute reasonably well, I bet the possession entry percentage is in the high 80s or higher on power plays now, where 20 years ago, possession entry on a power play was probably way below 50%. Like you'd end up dumping it in, or chipping and chasing it in, or whatever it is. But I bet and it's a great progression for the game. And again, I would love to know who was the first to introduce that in the NHL, because it's almost a staple now, but it's extremely effective.
Yeah, especially if
really hard to defend.
One of the wide guys is always a forward, right? Because they have that, one D's on one side and one D's back. So one of the wide guys in that diamond that's going back is always a forward. So if they pass, when the 2 guys they pass and they attack that forward, I bet you the percentage is really high there.
Yeah, it's just really high. It's really, like I've said before, I've spent a lot of time really trying to figure out like what's the best way to defend this. And really, I saw it once this week. In a lot of ways, the best way to defend it, if you can, is to just let the guy skate up the ice with the puck, the D. And if you can, just, as best you can, have your one penalty killer, just let the guy skate up the ice and try to deny the drop pass, because then it's a 3-on-3 at the blue line. But even that's tough, because we all know there's so much space there that most NHL guys are going to be more than capable of still having a possession entry. But it's just an interesting thing, and it's a great progression in the game that's helped the game a lot, and I think has helped, generally speaking, helped power play percentages in the NHL go from, 20 years ago, like when I was in Atlanta 20 years ago, if you were above, like if you were like 22% in the NHL in the power play, you were in the top 5 or 7 in the league. And now we've got a lot of power plays that are 25, 26 and higher. I just think it's been a great progression in the game, thankfully.
Yeah, that and well, Edmonton's over 30, I think.
Yeah, they're right at 30, and yeah.
And I think, and what I really see now is, and I think Patrick Kane was the first guy I saw doing it a lot, is using that extra 4 feet above the top of the circles. There's so much stuff going on up there now where they're doing scissors there and all kinds of things that didn't really happen very much before. And basically, I think the defenders they have to go man to man. If they drop that guy, who gets him?
Mm-hmm.
And that changes the defensive structure quite a bit. Just you can have a D chasing the guy all from one dot all the way across the top down to the other dot. Because if you drop him, the guy's wide open to do plays.
Yeah, and we know Edmonton is kind of a one-off on the power play because they got the 2 world-class elite guys, but still, they're I think like the power play in particular is that power play breakout is something else. Kind of another funny thought I had watching the game the other day is I'm more of a Huberdeau fan than a lot of people maybe are at this point, but the other night it was pretty interesting watching Johnny Rotten, Johnny Hockey Gaudreau make 2 great seam passes and get 2 helpers on the power play, and maybe 80% of the fans in the rink that night thinking, "Wow, that's what we need. That we're missing that." But Huberdeau made exactly the same 2 passes in the game, but the player on the receiving end didn't convert. They got Line on the one side, and so it's just
really
one of those subtleties.
Timer guy.
Sorry.
Calgary doesn't really have a one-timer guy
Yeah. Well, they need they do. They need a lefty. They've got Kadri playing in the bumper, but they might benefit from moving him to the flank. So when Huberdeau makes that forehand pass, they got a one-timer guy over there.
Yeah.
Because Anderson, he's a righty, plays at the top. He can one-time it, obviously, but Dubé's, that might be a better spot for him too, because he can.
Yeah, well, he won the game the other day with a one-hammer.
Yeah, and the 2-on-1, yeah.
I think he's maybe the most undervalued guy in that team. I'd love to see. I think it's a waste of Huberdeau to have Luch on the right wing there, playing his off wing, and I'd love to see the 3 top players on the team together, Lindholm, Huberdeau, and Kadri, and have Dubé play center on that other line, because I think he's a way better centerman than he's a winger. And Calgary have a top scoring line like they did before, because I really think Huberdeau he's got nobody to finish on the sides when he's passing.
Yeah, I really like their forward mix now. Like I like the way Pelche looks. That Dewar, I think, is a really great addition to their depth. He's clearly getting comfortable and being productive and playing well. More speed than Lewis or Richie, and a big body again. I really like their forward mix. I still think they're really lacking on the blue line in defensive intelligence. I think Tanev's the only solid, reliable D they have defensively. Hanifin, Anderson, great offensive players. And, not bad defensively, but, make too many errors in judgment defensively. Same with Zadorov, and Stone is just a depth guy. I really think they, like last year, they really need to go out and find a really good, solid defensive or two-way D. You know, Uyghur is looking more and more like a pretender to me. Too consistently making errors, and you know, he had a real tough one the other night. Not trying to
He
pick on.
has great games, but he pulls a lot of bonehead plays for sure.
Yeah. And so I think they really need to add a good solid D. So if they could find a really good solid defensive D to play with Tanev and be a shutdown pair, then they could let maybe Hannafin and Anderson play as a real dynamic offensive pair, and they'd have a pretty good top four there. But I don't know. They just don't look like a real threat to me at this point. Unfortunately, I hope they turn out to be, but
Their goals against is a little too high right now.
yeah, they just give up too much for me. Anyway, we're probably boring Wally with our NHL talk now. Hey Wally, your mic's off. Hey Wally, what's the plan? How are we gonna get together to get into the game the other night? I think I might need to drive down. It's tomorrow night, right? The Dome game?
Yeah. Do you have the tickets on your phone? Gary Barker was going to send them to you.
No, he hasn't sent them to me yet.
I've got them on my phone, but I can't download them.
Okay, because like I said, I probably am going to need to, our cat needs to get insulin twice a day. I might have to zip home between games. It'll only take me maybe an hour or less. So I definitely want to go to the women's game.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you could maybe jog his memory to, I don't know if he can send both of. Can he send both of us the tickets, or if you?
I've got them, but I can't access them.
Because you and I could. You're going down for the women's game too, right?
Yes.
So you and I could maybe plan to meet there at whatever 3:30 or whatever you want.
3:30 would be a good time, and I could meet you at I'm assuming the north entrance.
Yeah, the one we always go in, the one where the ticket booth is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can meet there at 3:30. That'd be fine.
Okay. It's just getting those tickets, so I'll call Carrie. I've got a bit of a cold. I'm hoping to be okay tomorrow, and if I feel like I do today, I've got to wear a mask there because I don't want to pass on the cold.
Yeah. Have you got a test kit to test yourself just in case?
Yeah, I do. I've got one left. I'll do that shortly. So, but I'll give Carrie a call right now, and